Announcer here, play-by-play for the Abby Canucks. You got it locked on the line change, a Vancouver Canucks podcast.
What's up, Canucks Nation? Welcome back to the Line Change, and if you're new, welcome to the Line Change. Could Elias Pettersson actually be on the move? It's a question every Canucks fan is dreading, or, well, perhaps you're in the get rid of this guy camp and can't wait for that day to finally arrive, despite being the apparent cornerstone of Vancouver's future. When he signed that $11.6 million contract, the rumor mill is spinning faster than a Elias Pettersson deek, and this summer, the trade market could reach a breaking point. From planners looking for a piece to rebuilding giants ready to make the landscape of the NHL could be shifted by one simple phone call. We're breaking down the 6 teams that are positioned to pull off such a blockbuster. We're talking about the Carolina Hurricanes, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Detroit Red Wings, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the LA Kings, and the New York Islanders. Several of those teams we've obviously talked about in the past and have made it known that they were interested in Elias Pettersson. So, Canucks Nation, buckle up because the PD sweepstakes might be just getting started. Now, we're going to go over and check out an article that talks about this, that highlights this over on Canucks Army. This article actually written by Stéphane Roger of Canucks Army, and it says here, as you can see, which NHL teams are most likely to be interested in an Elias Pettersson trade this summer. So let's go ahead and check this thing out. This is a great read from Stéphane Roger. I've already, talked about how much I love his articles, and he's just got some great stuff. So he goes on to say, Elias Pettersson scored the 499th and 500th points of his career all the way back on Tuesday night against the Anaheim Ducks almost a week ago, a mark that now stands as the 7th most points anyone has ever achieved in a Vancouver Canucks jersey. Of course, PD added on to that total in the game the other night against the Calgary Flames, picking up 2 more points, so he is now at 502 points. How much further Pettersson makes it up that chart is highly dependent on how the 2026 offseason goes. There are still plenty of pundits who claim that a Pettersson trade is possible, or perhaps even likely this summer. We hold no claims to insider knowledge on this front, but anytime a rumor of this magnitude makes the rounds, we do like to dabble in the feasibility market. That's a market that is volatile when it comes to Pettersson. Anyone trading for him now is committing to an $11.6 million cap hit from now until 2032. They're committing to ages 28 through 33 for him, and they're committing to a player who is far removed from their previous best. That it's a legitimate question whether it is even possible for him to ever get back there, never mind probable. There are some positive factors worth discussing too. Say what you will about his overall performance vis-a-vis his career, but it's also true that Pettersson is playing the best hockey that he has in 2.5 seasons right now. It's also true that he's managed at least a minuscule comeback of sorts amid an absolutely disastrous Canucks season in which the team has really collapsed around itself. Pettersson also remains a center, and that is a position of great scarcity in the NHL, especially when we talk about centers available for trade. We can't say that there will be an extensive, robust, or even an incredibly enthusiastic market for Pettersson's services this summer, but there should still be enough of a market to have several teams kick the tires, maybe even enough for a handful of them to make what the Canucks could consider to be legitimate offers. If that comes to pass, we think these teams are the most likely to get involved in said tire kicking, starting off with the Carolina Hurricanes, who, of course, have always been in when it comes to Elias Pettersson. They have gone after him in the past, including a Knicks trade that almost came to fruition a couple of years ago. This is the alphabetical place to start, but it's also the logical one because we know for a near fact that the Hurricanes have been in pursuit of Pettersson before. As I just mentioned, word is that a Pettersson for nature swap nearly occurred, which again I just mentioned a couple of seasons ago, and there have been inconsistent rumors ever since of Carolina's sustained interest. The Hurricanes look just as needy at center as they were before. Sebastian Aho is a star, but Logan Stankoven might be a better fit as a top 6 wing in the long term than as a true 2C. Getting Pettersson in there would make for an incredibly strong sextet up top with Olive Aho, Stan Coben, Seth Jarvis, Andrei Svechnikov, and Jackson Blake there to surround and support Pettersson. For his part, Pettersson would aim to take a little offensive pressure off of Aho from above and a little defensive pressure off of the aging Jordan Staal from below. The fit is there. Carolina also has a ridiculous amount of cap space for a contending team and are heading into the season with more than $13 million of cap space available. They're perhaps the only quality team out there that could take on Pettersson's cap hit without even blinking and without the Canucks even retaining. Next up, we have the Detroit Red Wings. We started hearing some heavy rumors about the Red Wings and Pettersson around the trade deadline, but most of them suggested that an offseason transaction was far more likely. But just how likely is it? The Red Wings' rebuild has enjoyed some real success this year, but it is also displaying a bit of uneven kilter. The Red Wings are appropriately enough well stocked on the wings. They've got an excellent blue line developing, and they've got multiple future and current options in the crease. Their big gap seems to be down the middle, where they've got Dylan Larkin in place at 1C, but not much after him. Neither of Marco Kasper nor Nate Danielson have grown into that 2C role just yet, and there's a bit of a difficulty in trying to bridge the gap between Larkin's remaining prime and those two coming into their own. Enter Pettersson. If we're talking about a franchise where someone like Pettersson could thrive, it's probably Detroit, the only franchise out there with a prouder tradition of Swedish excellence than Vancouver. The presence of Larkin would take an awful lot of pressure off Pettersson's performance, allowing him some time to focus on rediscovering his game. Contract-wise, the Red Wings have done well in getting their big pieces, namely Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond, signed to long-term extensions early that are already well into surplus value territory. That efficient spending allows them to perhaps overspend a little elsewhere and to care less if Pettersson never quite lives up to his cap hit again. Next up, we have the LA Kings. There was enough buzz about the Kings and Pettersson near the deadline that we wrote about, and the general conclusion was that Pettersson represented a fine enough option to replace the retiring Anze Kopitar with a younger two-way center so as to bridge the gap between their old core and their upcoming youth. Obviously, we did a video on that as well, closer to around the trade deadline. With the Kings having acquired and committed to 2 more years of Artemi Panarin at the actual deadline, we think that line of thinking might continue. Sliding Pettersson into Kopitar's vacancy would at the very least prevent Quinton Byfield from having to step up into a dedicated 1C duties right away, a responsibility he is plainly just not ready for. One might argue that neither is Pettersson anymore, but then maybe the two would form a platoon of sorts, like a 1A, 1B goalie situation. The Kings are going into next year with almost $20 million in cap space available. Even after that Panarin extension, they can afford Pettersson, and they pretty much have to spend at least some of that money on a center, or else they're going to go into next season with a single top 6 center on their roster. That's not workable for a team that clearly still has postseason aspirations. Not to mention, again, as I mentioned before, Canucks wouldn't have to retain, although you would think the Kings would most likely want the Canucks to retain on the salary, even though they have $20 million in cap space. You know they're probably going to want to make other moves as opposed to just getting a center. Next up, we have the New York Islanders. This one is a little more out there. A couple of whispers emerged about the Canucks and Islanders at the deadline, but of course they seem to be more focused on Connor Garland than anyone else. Obviously, that did not come to pass because Garland ended up, landing in Columbus, but perhaps the discussions got as far as including Pettersson, and perhaps they could be revisited. We don't hate the idea of putting Pettersson back into the vicinity of Bo Horvat, the leader who seemed to have the most positive impact on him in the past. And with Matthew Barzal transitioning more and more to the wing as time moves on, Horvat probably needs some backup at center. The Islanders brought in Braden Shen at the deadline, but his days of top 6 production are likely behind him. The Islanders want more offensive oomph to work with young wingers like Emil Heineman and Callum Ritchie. They're probably going to have to trade for it. Giving franchise cornerstone Matthew Schaefer more options up front is also a goal. Speaking of Schaefer, his unexpected arrival via draft lottery luck last year has really propelled this Islanders group forward. Their time to compete is a lot more present day than many thought it would be all of a sudden, and doing something with the opportunity will require some risks. Taking on Pettersson might be just one such risk that they would be willing to take. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Flyers. This one we're less sure about. Several other pundits have mentioned the potential connection between Pettersson and Philadelphia, but it's hard to see that coming to pass at all until the Flyers move on from Rick Tocchet. And of course, there's been whispers about the Flyers fan base not being happy with Rick Tocchet and wanting him out. It's speculation, but we imagine neither Pettersson nor Tocchet is particularly eager to work with the other anytime soon, especially with how things went in Vancouver. If Tocchet were to be let go, though presumably for his inability to connect with young phenom Matvei Michkov, which is a big reason behind the discourse when it comes to the Flyers fan base and Rick Tocchet, then maybe something starts making sense. The Flyers have a great collection of mid to young wingers like Michkov, Konechny, and the incoming Porter Martone, but a fairly patchwork collection of centers that includes an aging Sean Couturier and a recently extended Christian Dvorak. There is a need for additional talent more than anything at center, and while he may not show it as often anymore, Pettersson is still clearly in possession of some talent, with the Flyers abundant in both quality prospects and cap space, which is a whopping $40 million, so $20 more million than LA has heading into next year, and there's an opportunity for the Flyers to accelerate their competitiveness with a few key trades and the potential for those trades to be expensive ones. Again, Canucks wouldn't have to retain, although you would think teams would want the Canucks to retain on his salary. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. This one shouldn't make much sense, and yet it does at least a little bit. The Penguins are plainly trying to get the most out of Sidney Crosby's last seasons, and who knows when that will be, while also attempting to lay down some foundation for what comes after Crosby decides to hang up the skates. It's not easy work, but Kyle Dubas has done an admirable job of adding a next generation of Penguins to learn from Crosby and company along the way, like Ben Kindle, Igor Chenikov, and Rutger McGrody. It's enough to say that the Penguins won't be starting from scratch post-Crosby. Pettersson then represents a fairly unique opportunity. In the present day, he comes in and helps the Penguins be as competitive as possible for the next few years, and maybe that's quite competitive, because if we were to pick out a leader capable of sparking a real comeback in Pettersson, who better than Sidney Crosby, one of the greatest leaders this sport has ever seen. Look at the impact Crosby has had on Erik Karlsson for some evidence of this possibility. Then after Crosby retires, Pettersson could represent a bridge piece between the old and new generations so as not to slip entirely back into obscurity. The continued ties between the Penguins and the Canucks' front office make this all the more intriguing. As we wrap up here, it occurs to us that there are no sure things here, and that's to be expected. Even if we can get to the point where we might understand these teams' interest in Pettersson, there would obviously still need to be a lot of internal dialogue and decision-making before any of them turned that interest into a serious pursuit. With that in mind, look forward to a follow-up piece on this article entitled something along the lines of how various suitors will internally convince themselves to trade for Elias Pettersson. That one will be a lot more speculative by nature, but also a bit more fun. And on that note, we will actually do a follow video to that very same article. And I'm looking forward to doing that one. So be on the lookout for that in the coming days. It's going to be a good one. And on that note, I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Let me know, where do you think Pettersson could potentially end up? Could it be LA? Could it be Carolina? Could it be Philadelphia? Could it be, the Red Wings, Islanders? There's so many. And do you think it could actually happen this summer? Let me know in the comment section down below. And let's take a look at the NHL betting odds for tomorrow. And you know what? We'll look at two teams that were a part of this list, the Penguins and the Islanders. The Penguins are a plus 1.5 and a minus 250 on the puck line. The Islanders a minus 1.5 and a plus 205 on the puck line. The Penguins a plus 105 on the money line, and the Islanders a minus 125 on the money line. And just a reminder, these odds are, of course, subject to change, and please play responsibly. On that note, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, none other than DraftKings Sportsbook, which is, of course, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is built for the fastest game on ice. With player props and live betting, every shift, every shot, every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN, that's code THPN, to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois, 21 plus in most states. Void in Ontario, restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which will expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. This is a limited time offer. Copyright 2026 NHL, all rights reserved. This video has been a presentation of both DraftKings Sportsbook as well as the Hockey Podcast Network. Be sure to check out the network for your favorite podcast covering your favorite team at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com, the home of hockey podcasts, where it's every team, everywhere. Once again, drop your comments down below. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next line.